You decide to cancel one subscription today. Just one, nothing dramatic. You open the app, you look for the button. It isn't there. Instead, there's a menu, then a submenu, then a question that feels strangely personal. Are you sure you want to leave? You click yes. Another screen appears. A discount. 50% off just for you, just for today. You say no thank you. Another screen appears. Are you sure? Really sure? By the time you actually cancel, 4 minutes have passed and you feel vaguely exhausted, like you just argued your way out of a room. You probably blamed yourself. Bad memory. Bad timing. You just didn't look hard enough for the button. But you were never missing anything. The button was never simple to find, because it was never supposed to be. This is one of the most quietly perfected systems in modern business, and almost nobody notices it happening. Signing up for something takes 10 seconds. Canceling it can take 10 minutes, 3 phone calls, or in some documented cases, an actual letter mailed to a physical address. That gap between how easy it is to start and how hard it is to stop has a name inside the industry. Researchers call it friction, and friction is not an accident. It is a product feature designed, tested, and shipped like any other. Think about the last time you signed up for something. A streaming service, a meal kit, a gym somewhere. A product team sat in a room and asked one question. How do we get this person to say yes in under 30 seconds? They shortened the form. They removed a step. They made the button bigger and brighter and impossible to miss. That is called reducing friction, and companies pour enormous resources into it because every extra click between you and a purchase costs them money. Now flip the question. How do we get this person to stay when they've already decided to leave? That is a different problem entirely, and it has its own playbook. Hide the cancel option 3 menus deep. Require a phone call during limited business hours. Route the customer through a retention specialist trained specifically to keep them on the line. Offer a discount at the exact moment they try to leave. Ask them to confirm their decision 2, 3, sometimes 4 separate times. Each of these steps is small. Together they form what researcher Harry Brignall named a dark pattern back in 2010, a design choice built specifically to work against the user's own intention. Here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. This isn't guesswork on the company's part. It's measured, A/B tested. Every extra screen, every added question, every delay is checked against a single metric. How many people give up and stay subscribed simply because quitting became annoying enough? Behavioral researchers call this a cancellation funnel, and it is designed with exactly the same rigor as a checkout funnel, just running in reverse. You'd think this would eventually catch up with companies, and in one very specific case it did. In 2023, the Federal Trade Commission sued Amazon over its Prime subscription. Not because Prime existed, but because of how difficult the company had made it to leave. Internal documents released during the case referred to the cancellation process by an actual internal name, the Iliad flow, a joking reference to how long and difficult it was, like the ancient epic poem. The complaint alleged the flow had 4 separate pages, multiple option screens, and repeated attempts to change the customer's mind before finally allowing them to leave. That name alone tells you everything. Somebody inside that company understood exactly how long and painful they had made the process and gave it a name that treated the difficulty as a kind of inside joke. That case became part of the reason the FTC introduced what's known as the click to cancel rule, a regulation requiring that ending a subscription be just as easy as starting one. If you can sign up online in 2 clicks, you should be able to cancel online in 2 clicks. It sounds obvious. It sounds like something that should have always been true. The fact that it needed to be written into federal policy tells you how far the imbalance had drifted. But here's the quieter truth underneath all of this, the one that has nothing to do with lawsuits or regulations. Even when a cancellation process is technically fast, it can still be psychologically difficult. And that difficulty isn't about buttons, it's about you. There's a well-documented behavioral tendency called the sunk cost fallacy, and it shows up everywhere in this story. You've already paid for 3 months. You barely used it, but canceling now feels like admitting that money was wasted. So you keep paying, telling yourself you'll use it more next month. Next month arrives, nothing changes. The subscription sits there quietly, charging you for a version of yourself that never actually shows up. There's also something psychologists call the endowment effect, first studied extensively by economist Richard Taylor. Once you own something, even something as small as a subscription, You value it more than you would if you were considering buying it fresh. That gym membership you haven't used in 6 weeks doesn't feel like 6 weeks of wasted money. It feels like a small part of your identity, the version of you who goes to the gym, and canceling it feels like giving up on that person, not just canceling a charge. Companies know this. They don't need to force you to stay if your own mind will do the work for them. That's why so many retention screens don't argue with logic at all. They argue with identity. Are you sure you want to give up your progress? Are you sure you want to lose your points? Are you sure you want to leave the community? None of these questions are really about the product. They're about who you'll feel like if you leave it. Add this all together and you get a business model that barely needs to convince you to stay. It only needs to make leaving feel slightly harder, slightly more uncertain, and slightly more emotionally costly than simply doing nothing. And doing nothing, it turns out, is the most profitable behavior in the entire subscription economy. Industry researchers have a specific term for the money made this way. They call it the ghost revenue, income collected from customers who intended to cancel months ago but never quite got around to finishing the process. That number is larger than most people assume. Some subscription analytics firms estimate that unused or forgotten subscriptions account for billions of dollars in recurring charges every single year, quietly renewing in the background of people's bank statements. Not because anyone is being deceived exactly, just because friction plus human psychology equals inertia, and inertia is worth an enormous amount of money if you're the one collecting the monthly fee. Think about what that means from the other side of the transaction. A single forgotten subscription might only be $10 or $15 a month. On its own, that feels almost too small to matter. But multiply it across a customer base of tens of millions, and multiply that across every month a person stays subscribed without using the product, and you start to see why so much of the modern subscription economy isn't actually built around delivering ongoing value. It's built around delivering enough value once, at the very beginning, to earn that first yes, and then relying on friction and forgetfulness to do the rest of the work for years afterward. This pattern didn't start with streaming apps or gyms. It's much older than that. Newspaper subscriptions have used a version of this for decades, requiring a phone call to cancel while allowing sign-up by mail. Gym memberships have used it for even longer, sometimes writing multi-year contracts into the fine print that customers only discover when they try to leave. What changed is the scale. A gym has one location and a limited number of members. A streaming platform or a software subscription can apply the exact same psychological pressure to tens of millions of people simultaneously, refined by data from every single one of them. That refinement is the part people underestimate. Every retention screen you've ever seen was almost certainly tested against an alternative version, shown to a different slice of users, measured against how many people stayed subscribed afterward. If the 50% discount screen keeps 3% more people subscribed than a 25% discount screen, the 50% version wins, and it gets shown to everyone. If asking "Are you sure?" once works better than asking twice, the flow gets trimmed. If asking twice works better than once, a second screen gets added. Nothing in that sequence is guesswork. It's the accumulated result of millions of small experiments, all pointed at the same outcome: keeping the subscription active for one more billing cycle. There's a reason this works even on people who fully understand what's happening. Researcher Robert Cialdini, known for his work on the psychology of persuasion, has long pointed out that consistency is one of the most powerful drivers of human behavior. Once you've said yes to something, even quietly, even just by not canceling last month, your mind treats staying subscribed as the consistent choice and canceling as the choice that requires justification. The subscription doesn't have to convince you it's worth keeping. It just has to make canceling feel like the more effortful, more unusual decision, and your own mind will supply the rest of the resistance for free. This is also why annual plans are pushed so heavily over monthly ones. A monthly subscription gives you 12 decision points a year, 12 separate moments where you might reconsider. An annual plan collapses that down to one single moment of doubt, buried on a renewal date you probably don't have memorized. Companies aren't just selling you a lower price when they push the annual option. They're selling themselves 11 fewer chances that you'll notice the charge and think twice about it. None of this means every company is acting in bad faith. And it doesn't mean subscriptions themselves are a trick. Plenty of them are genuinely worth what you pay, used every week, delivering real value long after the first month. But the next time you sit down to cancel something and find yourself clicking through screen after screen, it's worth remembering that the difficulty you're feeling was designed. Somebody built that exact sequence of screens on purpose, tested it against alternatives, refined it using data from people just like you, and shipped it because it worked. So today you decide to cancel one subscription. Nothing dramatic. This time you notice the button that isn't there. You notice the discount screen. You notice the question that feels strangely personal. And for the first time you understand exactly why it's there.